What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in today. I am joined by Kyle Posey of Niners Nation. Kyle, how you doing?
Doing well, man. How's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking 49ers as usual. So let's just get right into it. Kyle, the 49ers did something kind of interesting this offseason, and they didn't really address their secondary. The guys that are on there right now, Akello, Sherm, Mosley, who do you think is worth bringing back after this season?
That's a good question. I think they're kind of, trying to see how that plays out this year because Mosley's going to be, I believe they're all going to be free agents. So whoever wins the starting job, they're going to have a position to put themselves in, or they're going to have a chance to put themselves in a position to earn a lucrative contract or a contract worth them back. So I don't know that there's a concrete answer. I'd imagine Mosley. So right now, Mosley played well enough in his first season where, you want to see what he can do with another year of extensive play. So I imagine they're going to bring Mosley back no matter what happens, just because he's a building block and he showed enough promise. After that, we're going to see about Witherspoon because, he's been up and down throughout his career. And then if, it depends what Sherman's asking price is as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the main point about all that is their asking prices. It's a kind of a cap strapped team. They don't have much flexibility when it comes to their cap space. So I think that's going to play a major role moving forward. And obviously if they draft a rookie, that guy's going to take some time to get used to it, get adjusted to the NFL speed, size. So that's why I was kind of a little shocked that they didn't address it going into this year. But they did address for like the billionth time, it seems like, in the first round, their defensive line. Before the draft, they traded DeForest Buckner to Indianapolis, got the 13th overall pick from Indy, and they used that pick to draft Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina. What does Kinlaw offer that Buckner didn't?
Yeah, Kinlaw he's a large, very, very strong man, just like Buckner. I think that Kinlaw's ceiling is a little higher. He's probably not as polished and as sound as Buckner is right now, but 3 years from now, there's a good chance that Kinlaw is going to be better than Buckner. And I know that's not going to be popular, but just knowing what he is right now and who is around him. Buckner didn't have Nick Bosa, this version of Eric Armstead, and Dee Ford around him in his first few years. He only had that last year. So Kinlaw being able to come up with those guys and just play on a star-studded defense from the jump as a rookie is going to do a lot for his development.
That's a really good point. A lot of people are kind of comparing Kinlaw right now to what DeForest was last year, and I don't think that's a fair comparison. I think you need to look at them from when they just entered the league, and just like you said, DeForest Buckner, he had the luxury this last year and the year before that of playing with a lot of talent around him. But when he first came in, that wasn't really the case. So I think that would be a more fair comparison to kind of compare him to how he first came in, obviously. There's been some questions about his health. I saw some people tweeting out that, they just drafted another injured defensive lineman, stuff like that. Are you concerned about his hip at all?
So I would be concerned, but he was clear. Like, he was medically cleared, and how much these doctors look into this, So if he wasn't cleared and they didn't feel comfortable with that, I imagine he would have been taken off the board. But again, at the same time, man, he's so talented that these are the type of risks you're willing to take. But I would be a little bit concerned just because, if you've been injured in the past, there's a good chance, especially lower body injuries, that those can come up again in the future. So there has to be some concern. I wouldn't say like, oh, it's not a big deal. But at the same time, injuries happen, and injuries can happen on any play at any time. So, a guy that's never had any sort of injury history can go down with an ACL and all of a sudden he's injury prone. So in this game, not as much as I would.
Yeah, that cracks me up the way you just said that somebody could get an ACL and then they're injury prone. It's like what people are calling Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh, he's injury prone. He's always injured. And it's like, how can you even say that? He got injured once or, maybe twice with the Patriots, and then he tore his ACL. And all of a sudden it's like, we can't trust the guy to stay on the field. Now bringing in Kinlaw, it's kind of already, like we've said, a vaunted defensive line. There are people there that are kind of cemented in their positions, at least as starters. How does he shuffle that up? Does he replace somebody? Does he come in kind of rotationally at first? How do you see that happening?
That's a good question. I imagine he's going to start, and just because he is the closest thing that they have to Buckner. And I don't think it was much of a surprise. A lot of fans didn't think they would go Kinlaw, but John Lynch was very adamant that we are going to build through the defensive line, and you're not going to just play a bunch of rotational players, knowing that the reason you got to the Super Bowl, the reason that you had so much success last year was because your defensive line was dominant. So Kinlaw, I imagine, is going to start. And then after that, it's going to be just a bunch of rotation players, such as Solomon Thomas coming off the bench, Kerry Hyder coming off the bench. And I mean, they have a good depth. So Ronald Blair might start the season on the PUP list, but once he gets back, he is going to, make a difference because he was a good backup as well last year. So and obviously they have DJ Jones, who's going to rotate on passing downs as well. So they have good depth. And I didn't mention Julian Taylor. Hopefully he gets help. As well. So if they get anything from Kentavious Street or Kevin Givens, and we're really going to be rolling in.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of proven but depth guys, kind of rotational players, role players that are behind these first round picks. And I think that's where the 49ers really luck out. And that's kind of really their bread and butter of this team. They've invested so much into it. It would kind of be a shame if it wasn't their bread and butter. But right. I also think that's kind of why they were so comfortable not addressing their secondary going into this year, because they felt so strongly about their defensive line. They felt that it wasn't really necessary, at least right now. But I could definitely see them addressing it this year, even mid-year, like a trade like they did for Sanders.
You can tell that it's still eating them up. And even he's not on the team. Emmanuel Sanders was on a Zoom call, and he was talking about the last throw from Jimmy G. So all these guys are still eaten up by it, and it's driving them. I think that it's not a blessing in disguise to lose the Super Bowl, but getting close and being as young as they are. I think if they were a veteran team, then I'd be worried. But I think they're so young and so ignorant about the situation that it's going to drive them to be better. And they understand that, hey, we're going to have to work. They understand that it's not going to be a cakewalk to be able to get back to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, we've seen all the workouts, and every athlete's working out. And it looks great on Instagram when you see a player working out and you're under the impression that, oh, he's the only one working out because I can see it. But all these guys are really putting in good work. And I really think that the camaraderie is going to make a difference next year.
Yeah, I think specifically probably the contrast between guys like Kendrick Bourne and guys like Dante Pettis. A lot of people are on Twitter just hyping Kendrick Bourne because he's, posting everything. You get kind of a behind the scenes view of him working out, and more so Dante Pettis, a guy who's a little more private, kind of not as much, at least in that aspect of his life. He doesn't show all of that on social media. And he kind of gets shredded on social media by guys on Twitter just saying he could tweet something completely innocuous, completely innocent, wow, this game's really cool. And he'll get always the first response would be you should be working out. Why don't you go lift some weights? And it's how do you know he's not doing that just because he's not constantly showing it? And no knock against Kendrick Bourne at all. That's super cool that he likes to share that with the fans. He likes people to get a kind of a view of that. But players shouldn't be expected to show that part of their lives and their routine.
It's his personality. If Kendrick Bourne he's a lively personality, so he's going to be a bubbly and he's going to show you what he's doing. Dante Pettis is reserved. Everything doesn't have to be the same. It's all about results. None of this will matter in October if Dante Pettis beats out Kendrick Bourne. Everybody's gonna be talking down on Bourne, acting like, he's this bad. And they'll probably reference the drops all of a sudden from last year. And it's amazing how quickly fans turn on guys, man. We saw it with Buckner, which is unreal to me.
You talked a little bit about Emmanuel Sanders and how he kind of was still coping with the loss, that last second throw. How much does his absence moving forward hurt the 49ers?
He was still, to this day, I believe it was a few days ago, he's still talking about the play. So even not being on the 49ers, it's still eating him up. But yeah, there's a lot of projection for the 49ers receivers. Talent is not the issue. Brandon Ayuk is very talented. Deebo Samuel, very talented. Trent Taylor, Jalen Hurd, Dante Pettis, Kendrick Bourne, Richie James. You can go down the list. Jawan Jennings. All of these guys are very talented people. But it's going to be about experience. It's going to be about how quick how quickly they are able to get acclimated to the NFL game, especially the rookies. And how much trust does Kyle Shanahan have? A lot of in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, Kendrick Bourne and Deebo Samuel, they messed up a lot. And for some reason, that does not get talked about. And it might be because of the route. You might not know because you can't see it. You don't think that it happened, but there were like four plays off the top of my head where they are running the wrong routes, and Jimmy G's hung out to dry. But nobody talks about that part. It's only you're going to blame either Kyle or Jimmy or whoever it was. But yeah, that was pretty concerning. But that was one game, and they're going to grow from that. So now, can Trent Taylor stay healthy? Can Jalen Hurd stay healthy? Who is going to be the leader? Because Emmanuel Sanders taught these guys how to prepare for football. Deebo said on the media call earlier this week, Deebo said that, once Emmanuel Sanders got there, he taught them, to how to watch film. So they were showing up an hour early to practice and learning how to get better, learning what parts of their game that they need to improve on. And they weren't doing that before Sanders got there. So hopefully they're able to soak up every bit of knowledge that Sanders gave them in those 3 to 4 months. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how a young group of receivers is able to handle the pressure, because even with the talent, teams are still going to make Jimmy throw the ball and beat them outside. So not obviously you have Kittle inside, but the 49ers are going to have to be able to make some plays on the outside. So we will see if Ayuk and Deebo are up to the task.
Yeah, and that's really, I thought that was interesting to hear that they weren't watching the film, that it took Emmanuel Sanders to come in and kind of train them how to do that, what to look for, stuff like that. Now that he's gone, who do you envision kind of taking that leadership role, taking the guys under his wing? Because it's a really, really young group, like you were saying. Who steps up in that position?
Deebo is talking about being more of a vocal leader, because that's just not his personality. So he said that's something that he's been working on. Honestly, I can see it being Trent Taylor, but he has to be on the field. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be one person. You can tell that they're a close-knit group and they all feed off each other's personality. So honestly, that might work out better for them. There doesn't have to be one alpha male voice. They can all be, good friends and good teammates and good competitors, and that will all drive them, and they know what to expect when that happens. So I can see it just be, kind of by committee.
Okay. Yeah. And I could see that too. Like you said, they're all kind of, I want to say almost on the same level, not necessarily maybe when it comes to talent, but when it comes to experience and when it comes to proving themselves on the field, they're kind of all right there. Now, you talked a little bit also about Trent Taylor. Maybe he steps up. 3 guys with big question marks going into last year and even this year: Trent Taylor, Jalen Hurd, and Dante Pettis. Have you heard anything on these 3 guys and what the 49ers expectations are for them moving forward into this year?
So Taylor was going to be a big part of the 49ers plans last year in training camp. On third downs, especially, that's who Jimmy G was throwing the ball to. Like, he was going to Trent Taylor. He wasn't throwing the ball to Deebo Samuel. He wasn't throwing the ball to Dante Pettis when he was healthy, or even honestly, he was going to Taylor over George Kittle in these situations. So I can imagine Taylor having a big role. There were some reports over the last couple of weeks. There have been more and more reports coming out that everybody that was at the training camp, at the 49ers training camp, like the coaches expected Trent Taylor to have a Pro Bowl year. So they're very, very high on him. They expected him to catch over 90 balls. So if he's healthy, he does bring a level or an added dimension on the 49ers that they just don't have. Just that guy that understands how to get open and that's reliable, that can get open underneath. So him, and I think he's probably the best complement to Ayuk and Deebo. So I would lean him to be the wide receiver 3. But at the same time, man, Jalen Hurd, he was better than Deebo in training camp as well last year. So people will forget that as well. So Deebo took off, but like Hurd is a crazy talented receiver, and he's like the big guy in the middle of the field that you can kind of throw it up to, as well as throw short passes to, because it's going to be very difficult to bring him down. So those 2, man, they have such high ceilings, especially with Kyle Shanahan calling plays, that it's going to be tough to imagine them not being successful if they are not on the field. And with Pettis, it's all about how his drive is, how his determination is. As you mentioned, the videos always come up. So if you just scroll Instagram, you'll see one video with a player working out. The other one will be Pettis in the mountains, just chilling, just having a good time. And that doesn't mean he doesn't like football. It just means he doesn't want to show you what he's doing. And I totally understand that. But at the same time, John Lynch did say he came into camp out of shape. And when that happened, he got injured. And then he also had another setback, and he was never able to recover from that. Because go back to his rookie year, those, I believe it was 7 games he played, he looked like a baller. He was a very good player. And the expectation was for him to build off that, and it didn't happen. It looks like he sort of got complacent, and Kyle challenged him over and over, and that he just never responded to that. So it's going to be very tough to give up on Pettis, because if we're just talking strictly, he's still one of the most talented receivers on this roster, and he would probably be a starter if he put it all together. But it's going to be whether he accepts the challenge, he just gets his mind right, and he's able to get over some of the drop. Like he had some big drop issues, and the running joke in training camp last year was that if there's any sort of contact or anybody that is near him, Pettis is going to drop it. So he has to get over that little mental hurdle. But if he does, he's going to be a dangerous player.
It's such an interesting case with him, because he has, like you said, he's got all the talent, he's got all the intangibles. He seems like a very, very football savvy kind of guy, at least knowledge wise. But again, like you said, he can't seem to kind of sew all the pieces together and put it out as a complete product. And I hope he can get it together, because he's a very talented receiver. And if he comes through this year, and if he shows up day one, the 49ers are looking at Debo, Ayuk, Trent Taylor, and Pettis, and Kendrick Bourne. Like, that's just a very, very talented group overall right there. And that's going to be hard to defend. And with so many guys, so much talent, who do you think is the odd man out when it comes to having to make those difficult decisions?
Yeah, that's tough. And I think we've seen the last of Richie James, which is probably not fair because he never got a fair shake. But I also think with the expanded rosters, we're going to see the 49ers probably keep another guy that they may not have in the past. So I would say Richie James, the odd man out. I also think that we've probably seen the last of I'm not going to say the last of, but because we haven't technically seen him, but I don't think that Travis Benjamin is going to make the roster.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that. The signing almost reminds me of like a Jordan Matthews type, where they brought him in. A lot of people were hyped because they know the name, and then he doesn't really make the cut above other guys that need to be there or that have kind of earned their spots more so. So that would be interesting to see, but I could definitely see it. 49ers have this classic, timeless red and gold and white jerseys. Now, they did throw in their 94 throwbacks this season, and in the past they had their black alternatives, which got some really mixed reviews. Do you see any new uniforms coming at all in the future for this team?
I don't think so. I think that if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think it's as simple as that, because let's just look at the jersey. What would you change? Why would you change it is the better question. They're just synonymous with what these, the classic whites, the classic, the reds and the golds. I don't see why they would change it. If you look around, like everybody, they're still one of the highest selling jerseys, and just the memories that are attached with the jerseys. I just don't see why they would change that.
Yeah, I totally agree. These jerseys are just a masterpiece. Well, every time they do these kind of like ranking the jerseys, who's got the best uniforms, I feel like the 49ers, no matter what, finish near the top. They're just really, really good looking jerseys. To be honest, their whites are my absolute favorites. I just don't think you can get a cleaner jersey than that. Although their 94 throwbacks were looking really good. Now, they brought in some new guys, Kinlaw, Ayuk, signed a couple free agents. They weren't really able to do much. And then they lost guys like Sanders. They traded away Buckner. Right now, if you had to, I guess, decide, who would you put them better or worse as they are right now than right at the end of the season, right when the Super Bowl ends? Are they better or worse than then?
So I feel like that you have to say worse, just because you're not going to – if you say better, you're essentially saying that Ayuk is better than Sanders and Kinlaw is better than Buckner, and that's not fair to say. So I would say worse for now, but at the same time, it shouldn't just be looked at as 1-1, because we're talking about, Jimmy Garoppolo taking the next step in Kyle Shanahan's offense in year 2. We're talking about Deebo Samuel being in year 2, Nick Bosa being in year 2, and everybody just being in this, being on the 49ers another year altogether. And you have to imagine that, Hurd and Taylor, they're probably not going to be, you would imagine that both of those players are not going to be injured. And then just looking across the roster, Mosley with another year under his belt, Fred Warner, Quan Alexander, Dre Greenlaw, like all these guys are going to take a step forward. And that's why I would imagine that, they can certainly be better. And I wouldn't be surprised by it at all. Or that's not fair to say.
Okay. Yeah. So they have the potential to be better, but right now on paper, it's just not proven. I don't think that's unquestioned, or excuse me, out of the question or unheard of at all. I think that's a pretty good way to break it down. I've seen a lot of people kind of ask this question, and they have made it black or white, tit for tat, guy for guy. Are they better or worse right now? So I like the way you broke that down. That makes sense. That's going to do it for us today, guys. Make sure you go ahead and follow Kyle on Twitter. His handle is below on the screen at KP_show. Kyle, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And take care. Hope to hear from you soon.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me. Take care.